Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video I just want to talk about how to get into photography on a budget, £650 approximately, or $750. In my view this is the perfect beginner kit. Basically we've got 3 kit lenses and a beginner camera, and hopefully this will be helpful. And I just want to go through what's the best kit to get for a really low budget. Just for if you're a student, you know, starting out and you don't have much money, this is probably perfect. But I just want to run through a few things before we start talking about the gear. So you can go for crop sensor cameras or APS-C sensor, which is a small sensor, or you can go for full frame cameras, which are more expensive. They're great for low light situations, but they can be quite expensive. And unless you're doing low light photography situations, crop sensor cameras, APS-C sensors will be fine for you, so you shouldn't need to worry about that. The only thing you need to be mindful of is, for example, we have the kit lens here, which is 18 to 55mm. Now that is more geared towards full frame lenses in terms of the millimeters, because old school full frame is 35mm. So when they say the lens is 18 to 55, because Canon do try and sort of mislead people, it's not 18 to 55. It's actually, on this specific lens, it's 28.8mm to 88mm. So you just got to remember this whenever you see a lens advertised. What you need to do is times the actual focal length by 1.6, or on Nikon cameras it's 1.5, times it by 1.6, and that'll tell you what the actual focal length of your lens is. So I'm going to talk about gear. I don't want to get too bogged down about full frame versus crop sensor, because I've just basically briefly discussed that. You can do your own research if you want to, but my suggestion is stick with crop sensor cameras and crop sensor lenses. But you can always use full frame lenses on your crop sensor camera, no problem. Just remember you've got to times your focal length by 1.6. So a camera I've been looking at is the Canon EOS 4000D digital SLR crop sensor camera. For £280 it'll come with the 18 to 55 kit lens. So we just put that aside. Other cameras you can consider is the 550D, the 600D, 650D, 750D, 800D, the 80D, which is their top line one, which I'm filming on at the moment, or the 7D Mark II 7D, which is the absolute top range of the actual crop sensor cameras. But if you want to spend more money you can, but you don't have to. So let's talk about the next lens we have here, which is the 10 to 18, which in full 35mm terms means 16 to 28.8mm. So this is great for blogging, it's great for doing property photography, because you get a large field of view. 16mm is considered very wide, and it has image stabilization and obviously autofocus and manual focus switch on there, just like the kit lens, the 18 to 55. It's a good lens, and obviously both these lenses have a very dark aperture. I think is it 4.5 to 5.6, which doesn't let a lot of light in, but then you've got to remember you're spending less money. And then the last lens I've got here, which I really love, it's fantastic, is the 55 to 250. Now if that equates, if I've got my list correct, to 88mm to 400mm. Really long, and it's probably one of the best quality long telephoto lenses I've seen Canon do on the budget side. Again, it's got an STM motor, so it's silent autofocus. Same with the 10 to 18, same to the 18 to 55 kit lens. All these lenses are really nice. So in terms of cost, because you want to know how much these lenses cost, Right. So the 55 to 250 or the 88 to 400, as in terms of if you times it by 1.6, £140 for that. That is a bargain lens, absolute bargain. You couldn't really ask for anything more than that. So we're just going to have a look on the laptop for pricing on the 10 to 18, which is the one that I recommend for doing property photography, indoor photography. So you can pick that up for about £200. A good place to get these lenses are actually on eBay or go to a local camera shop. So again, you can pick that up for about £200 for the wide angle lens. For the telephoto lens we have here, 140. If you had to buy one of the crop sensor budget cameras for 250, you'd probably have to pay about £80 for that separately. So my recommendation is, if you're going to get this 18 to 55 kit lens, which is really nice, I use it all the time actually for doing my blogs. While the 10 to 18 is really nice, this is just as nice if you don't want to carry the bigger lens around with you. So I do recommend you buy this kit lens with the camera, because you'll save yourself probably about £50 if you do that. You know, because you're talking about £250 for the body and £80 for the actual lens, versus for both together for £280. So you do save £50 buying the kit lens with a camera. So this is really the perfect setup for anyone starting out in photography. You know, with your crop sensor camera, your free lenses. As an additional, I do have another lens here that you might wish to consider. It's called the Nifty 50mm. You may have heard of it. It's a 1.8 aperture, lets a lot more light in than these lenses do. So if you go in low light situations, I recommend you buy this. There is something you need to know about this lens though. It's not silent, so it does make a bit of noise, and it doesn't have image stabilization. However, it does let a lot more light in than these lenses, probably 2 to 3 more stops of light. So if you're in a dark situation, this lens might be handy to get, and it only adds £100 to your budget. So instead of £650, £750, and you can put that as your fourth lens. And to be honest with you, this is the perfect kit in terms of photography, terms of your focal range that you're covering. So in terms of millimeter range that you're covering all the way, in terms of 35mm terms, 16 millimeters with your wide angle lens, all the way up to your telephoto lens to 400 millimeters. Now that is amazing that you can cover that sort of zoom range for such a small amount of money. You talk about what, £400 with these three lenses. Obviously with your crop sensor camera, you have to remember to times your focal length by 1.6. Just remember that. So obviously at 250 millimeters on the lens, while it says 250 on there, in real terms your focal range is 400 millimeters. Just remember that, because Canon does confuse people. In terms of other cameras I would recommend, because obviously you could go for the 4000D. The problems you might experience, if you're just starting out, you'll be fine, but as time goes on and you become more competent in photography and you want to develop your skills more, you may find one of the budget digital SLRs to be a bit restrictive, because they have a buffer in there, and if you take lots of raw images, it will fill the buffer up and it will take some time to load to your memory card. So what you've got to remember is that takes a bit of time, but a more expensive camera quickens that up tremendously, such as the 80D that I'm filming on now, or the 7D Mark II, the new 90D which is due to be released. But again, this is a budget, you know, we're talking £650 or £750 with the Nifty 50. Let's discount that for the moment. £650 for this kit. Obviously, if you were to get the 80D, which I have at the moment, or the 90D, you're probably talking £800 just for the camera, and then you're probably talking another £400 for your lenses on top of that. So you're talking £1,200. So in effect, you're talking double the price of what I've got. So really, for a new starter, I don't think you need to get that top range camera, you know, for doing video. And in terms of doing video, because I haven't touched on that, this, you know, the budget digital SLRs will handle HD video, 180p, no problems at all. Obviously, if you're someone who's after 4K video, you may want to consider a different option to this. You may want to, you know, if you do really need 4K, I believe the 90D coming out will have 4K video on it, or there is Sony options as well as Nikon options, you know, and it's up to you to decide which you think is better for you. But I just wanted to do a quick video from a beginner's perspective for starting out. What is the best kit out there for you? Personally, I think these three lenses. So let's just go through it one more time. Right, the 18 to 55 kit lens with an aperture of 4.5 to 5.6. It is, people do slate kit lenses and say they're not very good quality. That may have been true many years ago, but nowadays these are well made in terms of the optics. Sure, they're made out of plastic largely, you know, the mount on that is plastic, and if you drop it, it's likely to break, and you know, if you had an L lens, it might not break, so just keep that in mind. But saying that, you know, for the price that you're paying for, you know, if you were to buy this lens, you're probably talking £80 on its own, so if you did break it, it won't cost too much to replace it. Then we've got the wide angle 10 to 18 here, which obviously has image stabilizer just like the kit lens has. All these have image stabilization, apart from that nifty 50 that I showed you. But this lens is great for doing blogging, you know, so if you want to get you in the shot, maybe your friends as well, this is fantastic. It's great for doing property photography if you want to sell your house and create some really nice imagery or become a property photographer. I would highly recommend buying that lens to do that, because you'll certainly be able to do that with that lens. This actually has a plastic mount again. If you're into doing telephoto work and you can't afford one of the huge L lenses, I would recommend the 55 to 250. I know Canon has a habit of releasing some of the 75 to 300 lenses out, but personally I don't think they're as good in image quality as this. This is really good, and again, it's silent. All three lenses are silent autofocus. It's not manual focus because it's got an STM motor in, which is connected to your camera. So you can manually focus. Not saying you can't do that, but just remember it's connected to your camera. With the more expensive lenses, they have like a manual focus ring on the actual lens, which is a mechanical mechanism. So you can do that without the camera actually being turned on. This has a plastic mount as well. Plastic mounts are not as durable as some lenses with metal mounts. You may prefer metal mounts, but in general I found plastic mounts to be just as good. End of the day, if you're not taking your lens off your camera lots of times, I don't think it's a big issue. So really, for £650, this is the perfect setup. In regards to cameras that I've been talking about, the 4000D is considered Canon's budget entry-level digital SLR. There are older versions such as the 600D, 550D, but the more later ones like the 550D, 800D have the dual pixel AF autofocus. What that is it allows you to autofocus in video without having to manually focus. It's all automatic, and it's really nice. And a lot of the newer cameras are coming out with flip out screens, you see, and with a touch panel, so you can literally touch on the screen where you want to focus, and it'll focus there when you're doing 180p video. Typically, with the budget cameras, you should be able to do 60 frames a second in terms of 180p. But if you're after 4K, and it's an absolute must, you may want to consider the newer 90D, which is coming out within the next couple of weeks. If you've got the money, obviously there's the 1DX Mark II, and obviously, you know, if you want to up your game a little bit, you could go for the 80D or the new 90D as mentioned. You can pick up an older version of second-hand lenses, such as the 7D Mark II, or the older 70D, which is a bit older than the 80D, which is the actual the earlier lens to the new 90D is coming out soon. And you can pick up older cameras and older lenses, you know, second hand, probably a lot cheaper than this kit. This kit is brand new. If I was to estimate what you could get this kit for, second hand, I'd probably say you could probably shave a couple of £100 off that budget and get it for about £400. So you're talking about your budget SLR, your free lenses for around the £400 mark, and yeah, that's certainly doable. I'm not saying you can't buy second-hand equipment. I do it all the time. I bought a 7D some years ago for about £400, and I saved about £250 on buying it brand new. But you've got to decide, do you want brand new or are you happy to go second hand? It's up to you. But I just wanted to give you, in my opinion, what's the perfect beginner kit. So you want to go for one of the entry-level digital SLRs that Canon do. You can do mirrorless if you want to, and you can get adapters for the full frame and EFS lenses to go onto the mirrorless cameras if you wish to. Canon do an adapter, I think it's about £80 if you wish to put EFS or EF lenses onto a mirrorless setup, you can. However, I think this is perfect if you're a beginner and you're just starting out to get into photography. Don't get yourself too confused with different formats, different lenses. Go for this setup here, such as the 10 to 18, the 18 to 55, the 55 to 250. These are the budget EFS lenses that go on crop sensor cameras. Get yourself a budget camera, a budget crop sensor camera, a budget APS-C sensor. It's the same thing, for about £250, £280. See if you can get the kit 18 to 55 thrown in, but in 35mm terms, in terms of the focal length of these lenses, you are getting 16mm all the way up to 400mm. So you'll be able to do good wildlife photography with the telephoto lens. You'll be able to do property photography or landscapes with the wide angle 10 to 18, and with the 18 to 55, it's just a general purpose all round lens that you can use anywhere. You know, you could have this on your camera full time and not need these other two lenses. In that case, £280 gets you a starter kit, and it's quite relatively low price. And if you're a student, as you probably know, you don't have a lot of money to spend, do you? But I hope this video was informative about the cheapest way of getting into photography on a very small budget. But for someone who wants to do a bit of everything, you know, when I was at college, I was into wildlife photography, and I would have loved a lens like this, because I remember having something like a 70 to 210mm lens, which is hardly telephoto. This, you know, if I just look it up, 88mm, which is perfect for portraiture at the 55 range, all the way up to 400mm at the 250 end, for doing wildlife, sports photography in good light. You'll be fine with that. As I mentioned earlier on, the Nifty 50, which is considered very good quality, it has an aperture, right, of 1.8. What that means is it lets a ton of light in. So if you find you're in a building one day and you want to take some pictures, and these lenses are too dark because their aperture is very small, the aperture is quite small, you could pull this out, which only costs about £100 extra, and you'll be able to get really good photographs inside a building or a cathedral or something like that, and get a reasonably fast shutter speed to get pretty good results. You know, if you're a wedding photographer, you certainly would want that in your bag. And it's not to say you can't do weddings with this equipment. You can. Obviously you're not getting the high quality that the L glass gives you, but then again you're not spending maybe 10 times the amount of money on a lens. For example, this 55 to 250mm lens. If you were to get something like a 100 to 400mm lens, it would cost you about £1,800. You can pick this up for £140. Now, as I've always said in previous videos, it's all about diminishing returns when you spend lots of money. So my personal opinion is the more expensive lens that I'm talking about, the 100 to 400 Mark II L lens, will probably give you maybe 15% better image quality than this lens will. But is that £1,500 or whatever it is more that you're spending worth it to you in terms of image quality? Because you need to really decide what's right for you. I'm just trying to give you a bit of a guide on what sort of lenses might be good for you to go for. But if you're a beginner, I think you would be really pleased with a kit like this. And you know, if you feel you need a more professional camera than the budget one, maybe you feel the buffer is a bit slow, you can always upgrade. I started off with the 600D, believe it or not, and I used to find the 5 frames pictures that I were taking when I was doing wildlife photography or doing aircraft photography, that after a while I needed something with a faster shutter speed that could offload pictures to my memory card really quick, and I decided to upgrade to a 7D, which I got second hand for £400, and then from there I eventually went to the 80D that I've got now, which is just as quick, but obviously I got that brand new. So I just wanted to give you a rundown on what you can get away with on a small budget, and hopefully you found this video useful. Thank you and have a nice day.